What would you do if the only person who could save a child is the one no one wants to listen to? The story today immerses us in a world of luxury and silence, where the illness of a little boy is a mystery that consumes everyone. But sometimes, the truth is not found in expensive diagnoses, but in the simplest details that everyone ignores. If you like this type of content, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. We post videos every day, and give a like to the video if you like this story, and leave us a comment telling us where you are from and what time you are listening. Elara Geiner walked up the grand staircase of the Alcozer residence for the first time, dragging a compact suitcase and a heart full of cautious hope. At 26 years old, recently certified in advanced nursing, she had just been hired as the personal caregiver for little Bruno Alcozer, the 4-year-old son of multi-millionaire businessman Julian Alcozer. The Shield. The property was more than impressive. It was overwhelming. 3 stories of neoclassical architecture surrounded by gardens so vast and meticulously manicured that they seemed like a botanical park with a pool so large it could pass for an artificial lagoon. But what struck Elara the most was the silence. A heavy silence, almost unnatural. A house of that size, with those resources, should be overflowing with life, with movement, with the laughter of a child. Instead, there was only a dense stillness, an atmosphere that seemed heavy with an ancient sadness. "You must be the new caregiver." A firm and authoritative voice echoed in the marble foyer. It was Anne's Boros, the family's butler for almost 2 decades. A man of about 55, with an impeccable military posture, and a gaze so severe it sized her up from head to toe. "I am Anso. I trust you have read and memorized all the guidelines provided." "I read them, yes, sir, several times," Elara replied, recalling the detailed document she received. The instructions were more fitting for an isolation unit than a home. The boy. Bruno was critically ill. Any physical exertion was forbidden. The medications had to be administered with the precision of seconds, not minutes. She could not receive visitors of any kind. She could not under any circumstances leave the mansion. And an even stranger rule: keep verbal interaction to the bare minimum necessary for his care. "Young Bruno is in his room on the 3rd floor, West Wing," said Anna, without a hint of warmth. "Follow the rules to the letter. Any deviation will be reported to Mr. Alcozer, and your contract will be terminated. We value discretion and obedience here. We will have a professional relationship, if you understand that." Elara nodded, feeling a knot in her stomach. She went up the wide, carpeted staircase to the 3rd floor, her heart pounding. This was her first important job after graduating. She had specialized in pediatric nursing and intensive care for a deeply personal reason. She had lost a younger brother when she was just a teenager, an illness that the doctors took too long to diagnose. That day, she swore that she would never again allow a child to suffer in front of her without doing everything she could. The door to Bruno's room was made of wheeled wood. but it was decorated with superhero and space rocket stickers, although they looked faded, as if they had been there for a long time without anyone replacing them. She knocked gently. "Bruno, I'm here to take care of you." Silence. She slowly opened the door and was met with a scene that broke her heart. In the middle of a gigantic room, worthy of a luxury hotel, there was an enormous king-sized bed, surrounded by medical equipment that looked more like a hospital monitoring station than a child's bedroom. And in the center of that bed, almost lost in a mountain of pillows, was a little boy. He was small and painfully thin for his 4 years. Bruno had messy brown hair, enormous green eyes, and a sickly pallor that contrasted with the Egyptian cotton sheets. The air in the room smelled of a mixture of antiseptic and stale air. "Hello, Bruno. I'm Elara." The boy watched her with a distrust that startled her. It wasn't the normal shyness of a child. It was an adult-like resignation. "Are you going to leave too?" The question, so simple and direct, carried a weight of pain so profound that Elara had to swallowing hard to hold back the tears. "Why would I leave? All the nannies leave. Dad says it's because I'm very sick." Elara approached slowly, like someone approaching a frightened little animal, and sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a safe distance. "Well, I'm quite stubborn. I don't leave easily. May I ask what illness you have?" Bruno, without moving from his nest of pillows, pointed with a little finger to a stainless steel side table. "Lots of illnesses. I take medicine all day." Elara got up and went over to the table. She froze. It was a whole pharmacy. She counted at least 20 different bottles. Broad-spectrum antibiotics, powerful anti-inflammatories, vitamins in very high doses, supplements of all kinds, cough syrups, drops for congestion, patches. "How long have you been sick?" she asked, picking up one of the bottles. Bruno tried to count on his fingers, but he gave up. "Forever. Mom died when I was born. Dad says it was because I got sick in her tummy." Again, she thought, a child carrying a guilt that isn't his to bear. "Bruno," she said, with a softness that contrasted with the sterility of the room, "you are not to blame for your mom going to heaven." Sometimes adults are too sad to explain things well. "Do you know my dad?" "Not yet, but I am looking forward to meeting him." Bruno snuggled back among the pillows. Elara noticed them. There were at least 8 or 9 enormous pillows surrounding him, all of them impeccably white. "Why so many pillows?" she asked with professional curiosity. "Dr. Ramiro says I need them, that I always have to be lying down. The pillows help me breathe." Elara frowned. A 4-year-old child should not always be lying down unless he were in a critical condition, and although he was pale, his breathing at rest seemed normal. He felt pain when breathing, sometimes at night, especially, and he got tired. As for walking, he could not walk much. He got tired. Elara observed Bruno with her clinical gaze. The boy was clearly weakened, but something did not add up. She had experience in the pediatric ICU at the regional hospital. She had seen cystic fibrosis, severe congenital heart diseases, leukemias. Bruno didn't show the obvious clinical signs of any specific pathology she could identify instantly. Bruno, when was the last time you played in the garden? The boy's eyes lit up for a second before dimming. The garden? I can't go to the garden. It's dangerous. Dangerous. Because Dr. Ramiro says I can get bacteria and get sicker. Alara was more and more intrigued. Isolating a child in that way was not standard medical protocol, not even in severe immunocompromised cases. A balance was required. How about we read a story? I have a book in my suitcase about a dragon who didn't want to breathe fire. Bruno's eyes widened in surprise. We can? It won't hurt me. Of course we can, Bruno. Reading stories cures boredom, which is a terrible illness. When she started to read, she noticed something strange. The boy seemed mesmerized by her voice, as if he wasn't used to simple human interaction. Half an hour later, Julian Alcocer arrived home. He was a 38-year-old man, tall, with dark hair, perfectly styled, dressed in a three-piece suit that cost more than Alara's car, but his face held an expression of exhaustion and sadness that neither money nor power could hide. Julian dedicated 18 hours a day to Alcocer Holdings so he wouldn't think about the illness of his son and the paralyzing guilt of not being able to cure him, of having lost his wife in childbirth and now losing his son. How did the first day go? He asked Ans as he loosened his tie. The new caregiver seems competent, sir. She is following all the protocols. She's in the room right now. Julian went up the stairs, not two at a time, but with a weariness that reflected his spirit. He found Alara finishing the story about the dragon. Bruno was more cheerful than he had seen him in months. Dad. Bruno waved, but he didn't try to get out of bed. Julian walked closer, but he stopped about 6 feet from the bed, keeping a respectful distance, as if he were afraid of contaminating his son or catching his pain. Hi, champ. How was your day? Aunt Alara read me the story of the dragon that became friends with the prince and didn't breathe fire. How nice. Julian looked at Alara. His gray eyes were unreadable. Thank you for taking care of him. It's a pleasure. Mr. Alcocer. Bruno is a very special child. Special and very fragile, Julian pointed out, almost like a warning. I hope you have understood all his limitations. I have understood them. Yes, but she noticed the strange interaction. Julian seemed terrified of getting too close, as if showing affection could somehow hurt Bruno. Dad, are you going to have dinner with me today? Julian's face darkened. I can't. Champ, I have an important meeting with the Tokyo team. Bruno's little smile faded. You always have a meeting. It's work. Son, to pay for your medicines, all your medicines. Julian quickly left the room, almost fleeing, leaving Bruno sad and Alara deeply confused. That night, while preparing Bruno's 9 p.m. dose, Alara decided to review the prescriptions, one by one. As a nurse, she knew how to identify what each compound was for. How strange, she muttered, lining up the bottles on the counter of Bruno's private bathroom. There was medications for conditions that were completely contradictory. A beta blocker used for heart problems or high blood pressure, a potent bronchodilator for severe asthma, an immunosuppressant, usually for autoimmune diseases, and next to it, a vitamin cocktail to boost the immune system. It was as if Bruno had 5 serious and opposing illnesses at the same time. Bruno was asked in a low voice as the boy was dozing off, "Does your chest hurt?" "Sometimes, and my tummy, too." "And is it hard to breathe when you run?" "I can't run." Alara became thoughtful. The symptoms Bruno described were vague, and curiously, they matched the side effects of several of the medications he was taking. During the first week, Alara established a careful routine with Bruno. She read him stories, they played board games in bed, she taught him how to draw dinosaurs. The boy blossomed with the attention, but always within the confines of the bed and the room. One day, Bruno asked her a question that threw her off. "Aunt Alara, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetie. Why don't you wear a mask like the other ladies?" Alara frowned. "What masks?" "The other caregivers always wore a mask so they wouldn't catch my illness. Bruno, your illness isn't contagious." "It's not, sweetie. You can talk, play, and get hugs without any problem." Bruno's eyes filled with tears. Then, why does no one want to be near me? The innocent question broke Alara's heart. "I want to be near you, but you'll leave when you find out how sick I am." "I won't leave, Bruno. I promise." The boy snuggled into Alara's lap for the first time, seeking an affection he had been deprived of, like a plant that has never received sunlight. But not everyone in the house approved of this closeness. Dr. Ramiro Ibanez, the family's private doctor for the last 3 years, was a man about 50 years old, tall, with gray hair, and an intimidating air of superiority. He visited Bruno 3 times a week and didn't like changes in his routine. On Wednesday, he found Alara and Bruno on the floor on a rug, finishing a 100-piece puzzle. "What is going on here?" said Dr. Ibanez, his voice cutting through the air. Alara stood up quickly. "Good afternoon, doctor. We were doing a motor coordination activity, the jigsaw puzzle. Bruno should be in bed. The protocol is clear, absolute bed rest." "Doctor." With all due respect, Bruno was feeling well. To sit up for a little while, a little movement stimulates the circulation and prevents muscle atrophy. Dr. Ibanez looked at her with contempt. "Do you have a specialization in complex cases of combined immunodeficiency?" "I have training in pediatric nursing and intensive care." "That doesn't answer my question. You don't need to understand the clinical picture, Miss Jenner. You need to follow orders. Mine." Alara felt the humiliation, but she didn't back down. "Doctor, may I see Bruno's most recent test results? Just to better understand his condition and be able to take better care of him." "Are you questioning my diagnosis?" "No, doctor. I just want to understand. For example, the combination of an immunosuppressant with an immune stimulant." "Your job," he interrupted her sharply, "is to give the medicines at the exact time and keep the child on bed rest. That's all." He approached Bruno, who had visibly shrunk back. "Bruno, how are you feeling?" "Fine, doctor. A little chest pain, shortness of breath when I play a lot." Dr. Ibanez looked triumphantly at Ilara. See, the girl has made him exert himself too much. He's already showing symptoms. Ilara was confused. They had been sitting on the floor for 15 minutes. That shouldn't cause symptoms in any child. Doctor, what exactly is Bruno's primary diagnosis? Complex heart disease associated with severe primary immunodeficiency. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need him to get back in bed so I can administer his booster. Dr. Ibanez took out a pre-filled syringe from his briefcase and administered it to Bruno in his thigh. Ilara watched, feeling helpless. That night, when Bruno was asleep, Ilara locked herself in her room and opened her laptop. As a registered nurse, she had access to medical databases and clinical studies. She entered the supposed diagnosis from Dr. Ibanez. Strange, she murmured. Bruno's symptoms matched the classic clinical picture, but the strangest part was when she began to investigate one by one the 20 medications Bruno was taking. Her eyes opened in horror. The weakness, the paleness, the lack of appetite, the drowsiness, the stomach ache, and even the feeling of suffocation. All of them were known side effects of the dangerous combination of drugs they were administering to him. Could it be possible? She thought, her blood running cold. What if Bruno wasn't seriously ill? What if it was the medications themselves that were making him sick? The suspicion was so horrible that Ara could barely sleep. Was it possible that a doctor, a health professional, was inducing symptoms in a child to maintain a treatment? It seemed crazy, a conspiracy theory, but her instinct, honed in the pediatric emergency rooms, screamed at her that something was fundamentally wrong. The next morning, Ara began to operate with a new perspective. She became a meticulous observer, a shadow that recorded every detail. She carried a small notebook in the pocket of her uniform and noted everything. 9 a.m., morning dose, cocktail A. 8:45 a.m., pre-dose. Bruno is awake, pale, but mentally alert. Energy rating 310 at 9:30 a.m. Post-dose, extreme drowsiness, difficulty keeping his eyes open. He refuses to play. Energy rating a 10. It was a clear pattern. Bruno felt marginally better or less sedated right before each dose of medication. The drugs weren't relieving his symptoms. They were causing them. "Aunt Ilara," Bruno murmured that afternoon while she helped him drink some water. "Are you sleepy?" "No, sweetheart." "Why?" "Because I am. I'm always sleepy after the medicine, and my tummy itches. Did you tell Dr. Ibanez?" "Yes. He says it's the illness." Ilara clenched her jaw. On Thursday morning, something happened that changed the course of everything. It was sheet-changing day. Ilara had wanted to do a deep clean of Bruno's room since she arrived, but Anso Barros, the butler, had insisted that the cleaning staff had strict protocols and that she shouldn't interfere with the house routines. That day, she decided to ignore him. "Bruno, I'm going to change all the cushions and sheets. We're going to make it all fresh," she said, with a joy she didn't feel. "Okay, can I help you?" "Of course. Your job is to make sure I do it right." As she stripped the sheets, she focused on the mountain of pillows. They were made of a heavy, dense synthetic material. There were 8 in total. She picked up the first one and noticed a strange smell. The same smell, antiseptic and chemical, that permeated the room, but more concentrated. "How strange," she murmured. She began to remove the pillowcases, one by one. When she got to the third one, she noticed the weight wasn't uniform. She felt the fabric and sensed something small and hard inside, hidden under the zipper of the inner case. Her heart stopped. She unzipped the pillow's protective cover. There, sewn into the foam filling, was a small muslin fabric envelope, similar to a tea bag, and inside a fine white powder. She brought the sachet to her nose. It was the smell, a chemical smell, bitter. She recognized it from her pharmacology labs. My God, it can't be. She checked the other 7 pillows. Each one had an identical envelope, 8 envelopes of a chemical powder strategically placed for the child to inhale while sleeping. Oh my God. She understood everything in an instant. Bruno wasn't sick. He was being systematically sedated. The powder that he inhaled all night in his sleep left him weak, lethargic, and drowsy during the day. That, combined with the unnecessary medications that caused stomach aches and confusion, was the perfect formula to keep a healthy child looking like he was chronically ill. But why? Who would do something like that to an innocent child? Thank you so much for listening this far. If you like this type of content and want to know how Ilara unmasks this terrible plan, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Enchanting Tales. We post videos every day, and give a like to the video if you are enjoying this story, and leave us a comment telling us where you're from and what time you're listening. Ilara, trembling with rage and fear, took 3 of the sachets as evidence and hid them in the bottom of her toiletry bag. Then she returned to Bruno's room, closed the pillowcases, and left them on the floor as if they were ready for the laundry. Bruno, you know what? These pillows smell a little strange. I'm going to get you some new ones from the linen closet, okay? Some that smell clean. Okay, Auntie. That afternoon, Dr. Ramiro Ibanez showed up for his weekly visit. He entered the room, and his gaze went immediately to the bed. Where are young Bruno's special pillows? Special? He asked, feigning innocence, while his heart pounded. I took them to the laundry. They smelled a bit musty. Dr. Ibanez visibly paled, although he tried to hide it with anger. You did what? Those pillows can't be washed. They are orthopedic, imported, and very expensive. They are designed for his respiratory condition. Oh, forgive me, doctor. I didn't know. There wasn't any note. Well, of course you didn't know, he snapped. Where are they now? In the laundry room, in the special cleaning bag. Bring them immediately. Bruno can't sleep without them. It's dangerous. The doctor's nervousness was the final confirmation Ilara needed. I'll go right now, she said. Ilara went to the laundry room, but she didn't get the pillows. She hid them in the back of a cleaning closet. She wanted to see what would happen to Bruno if he slept one night without them. She replaced the pillows, the tampered ones, for normal, fresh ones from the linen closet. That night, Bruno slept on clean pillows without any sedatives. The next morning, Elara woke up at 6:30 a.m. to a sound she had never heard in that house. A crash. She ran to Bruno's room and froze at the door. Bruno wasn't in bed. He was on the floor next to a tower of wooden blocks he had knocked over. He was completely awake, with rosy cheeks and bright eyes. For the first time since Elara arrived, the boy had gotten out of bed. "Alone, Aunt Elara, Aunt Elara," he shouted, laughing. "I'm building a castle. Look, I'm strong." Elara felt her eyes fill with tears. Her suspicion was correct. The boy wasn't sick. He was being poisoned. Of course you can, sweetie. Build the tallest tower in the world. They spent the morning playing on the floor. Bruno had more energy than Elara had ever seen. He ran around the room, asked questions about everything. He asked her to read him 3 books in a row. "Aunt Elara, can I go into the garden today? Please? Let's see if your dad will let us, okay?" But when Julian Alcocer got home from work that afternoon, he didn't find the usual pale and sleepy boy. He found Bruno jumping on the bed, something Elara tried to stop without success, laughing his head off. The reaction from Julian was not one of joy. It was one of panic. "What's wrong with him? Why is he so agitated?" he asked Elara, his eyes wide with fear. "He's fine, Mr. Alcocer. He's just more lively today. He feels good." "This isn't normal," Julian said, backing away. "When Bruno gets agitated like this, it's a sign that he's going to have a crisis." "A crisis of what?" "From his illness. Dr. Ibanez always warned me. Extreme agitation precedes the severe episodes, the collapses." Elara was stunned. The father had been so conditioned that he confused his son's happiness with a symptom. "Sir, he's not agitated. He's happy. He's acting like a normal 4-year-old boy. It's the same thing. I'm going to call the doctor." Julian took out his phone and called Dr. Ibanez. "Doctor, you have to come quickly. Bruno is very agitated." "Yes, just like you said. I'm afraid it's a crisis." Dr. Ibanez arrived in less than 15 minutes, as if he had been waiting for the call. He entered the room and found Bruno playing cheerfully with Elara on the floor. "Just as I feared," the doctor said gravely, looking at Julian. "He's in a full-blown pre-seizure state." "A pre-seizure of what?" he asked, standing up. "Of a seizure. Children with Bruno's condition can have severe seizures, preceded by this hyperactivity." "But he has never had a seizure," said Julian, "because we always manage the episodes before they happen," the doctor exclaimed. Dr. Ibanez prepared a syringe. "I am going to give him an intramuscular sedative to prevent the seizure. It is the only way to stabilize him." "Doctor, wait." Elara intervened. "He is not hyperactive. He is just happy. He has normal child's energy. He does not need a sedative." "Miss Jenner," said the doctor coldly, "you do not have the experience to evaluate this. You are putting the child at risk." "Mr. Alcocer, I am warning you." Dr. Ibanez approached Bruno with the syringe, but she got in the way. "No, Bruno does not need that. Get out of my way, or I will call security. to have you removed from the house." Elara turned to the father in desperation. "Mr. Alcocer, please, look at him. He's fine. He's healthier than he's been since I arrived." Julian was torn. On one side, the doctor who had cared for his son for years, the only one who understood his strange illness. On the other, the caregiver, who had brought a breath of life to his son in just a few weeks. But fear won. The fear that Dr. Ibanez had instilled in him for years. "Doctor, are you sure he needs the remedy?" "Absolutely. If we don't administer it now, he could have a seizure tonight. He won't survive a full-blown seizure." The lie was so devastating that Elara was left breathless. Julian nodded in defeat. "All right, give it to him." Elara watched, horrified and helpless, as Dr. Ibanez injected Bruno with the sedative. In 20 minutes, the boy who had been laughing and jumping was back to his old self, drowsy, apathetic, with a vacant stare. "There," Dr. Ibanez said, satisfied. "Crisis averted. But, Sir Alcocer, this is serious. The caregiver took him out of his routine, and it almost cost us dearly. That night, Dr. Ibanez returned with new pillows. These are imported from Germany, even more special. They cannot be touched by anyone other than me or you. Mr. Alcocer." Elara saw him place the pillows on Bruno's bed. She was sure that there were more packets of poison inside them. Bruno went back to sleeping poorly, to waking up tired and being listless during the day. He whispered to Aunt Elara. "The next day, I felt weak again." The boy's innocent question broke her heart. She knew what was happening. But how could she prove it? She needed proof beyond her word against that of a respected doctor. Elara felt trapped. She was a prisoner in a golden cage, just like Bruno. She knew the truth. But she was alone. Dr. Ibanez had Julian Alcocer completely manipulated, and the household staff, especially Ansob Barros, only followed the orders of the doctor and the butler, who seemed to value routine over the boy's well-being. Over the next few days, Elara had to pretend. She had to go back to being the obedient caregiver, administering the doses that now she knew they were poison. Although she tried to give him the smallest amount possible without it being obvious, dissolving part of it in the sink before entering the room. But the main damage was coming from the pillows, and she couldn't touch those. She decided to investigate the only part of the puzzle she was missing: Bruno's medical history. Over the weekend, while Julian was on a business trip abroad and Dr. Ibanez wasn't around, she found Bruno sleepier than usual. "Bruno, sweetie," she said softly as they played a memory game on the bed. A game that Bruno kept losing constantly due to the sedation. "How long has Dr. Ramiro been your doctor?" Bruno blinked, trying to focus. Ever since I was in Mommy's tummy, I think." "And you've never seen any other doctors? Maybe one who tickles you with a little hammer, or a nice lady doctor?" Bruno shook his head. "No. Dad says Dr. Ramiro is the only one who understands my illness. The others don't know." "I see," Elara said, feeling a chill. And tell me, Bruno, have they ever taken pictures of your bones? Pictures? Yes, like with a camera, but one that sees inside. Or have you ever been in a hospital? The word hospital provoked a reaction in the boy. He visibly shrank between the pillows. No, hospitals are bad. They are dangerous for me. Dr. Ramiro says that if I go to a hospital, I could die. There are a lot of bacteria. Now Elara understood. Bruno had never been examined by anyone else. There was no second opinion. There were no X-rays, no ultrasounds, no independent blood tests. Dr. Ibanez wasn't just inventing a diagnosis. He was fabricating the boy's entire medical reality. He had completely isolated him from the real healthcare system. But why? Why would a respected doctor do something so monstrous just for the pleasure of controlling a family? It didn't make sense. There had to be something more. The answer came on Monday. Elara saw Dr. Ibanez's dark sedan come up the driveway. It was an unscheduled visit. Bruno was sleeping his sedative, forced nap. Elara panicked, but then she saw that the doctor wasn't going up to the third floor. He headed straight for Julian Alcocer's office, who had returned from his trip that morning. Elara knew this was her chance. With her heart in her throat, she took an empty tray from the kitchen, filled it with 2 glasses of water, and headed to the West Wing. Anson stopped her in the hallway. "What are you doing, Miss Skinner?" "Mr. Alcocer and the doctor are in a meeting." "I'm bringing water," she said in the most neutral voice she could manage. Anson looked at her with suspicion. "They didn't ask for anything." "Leave it. I'll take care of it. I'm just doing my job." "Anson, excuse me." She walked past him before he could stop her. She approached the study. The solid oak door was closed, but not completely. There was a crack just 1 centimeter wide. She could hear the voices inside. She left the tray on a small nearby table and hid in the hollow of an archway, pretending to fix her shoe, close enough to hear. She heard Julian sigh, a sound laden with despair. "Doctor, I don't understand. I thought that with the new imported medications." Dr. Ibanez's voice was grave, falsely compassionate. "Julian, I have to be honest with you. Bruno's condition is deteriorating. The medication is no longer enough. His immune system is collapsing." Elara had to bite her lip to keep from screaming. "What? What does that mean?" Julian asked in a broken voice. "It means we need to move on to the next phase. There are specialized genetic tests, a new technology of quantum contrast resonance imaging, and a minimally invasive cardiac biopsy. They are very expensive tests, of course. They aren't done here. The samples have to be sent to a laboratory in Switzerland." "How much?" "It doesn't matter what it is," Julian said. There was a pause. Elara held her breath. "We're talking about a new line of treatment. The initial tests and the importation of the equipment will cost about 200,000 euros. Elara almost choked. "And will that cure him?" Julian asked with a thread of hope. "Julian," the doctor said, lowering his voice, "we have to be realistic. Without these tests, I doubt that I doubt he has more than 6 months left. With them, we can buy some time." maybe a year. Ilara felt the floor disappear from under her feet. It wasn't a medical error. It wasn't the doctor's psychological disorder. It was the scam, more cruel and methodical than she had ever seen in her life. Dr. Ibanez was giving Bruno a false life expectancy to extort hundreds of thousands of euros from a terrified and guilt-ridden father. She couldn't hear anymore. The rage was so strong, it deafened her. She ran out of there, forgetting the tray, and went up to her room. Anso saw her run by, but Ilara didn't stop. She locked herself in her room, trembling. She grabbed her phone and the 3 envelopes with the white powder she had hidden. She knew she couldn't do this alone. She needed professional help, someone who would believe her. She left the mansion, saying she had a family emergency. She didn't even look at Ho. She ran to the bus stop and took a taxi she couldn't afford to the public hospital in the north, where she had done her internship. She burst into the pediatric unit. "Is Dr. Solis here?" "Dr. Hector Solis is with a patient, miss," said the nurse at the counter. "It's an emergency. I'm Ilara Ginner. I was his student. Please, tell him I'm here." 5 minutes later, Dr. Hector Solis, a 60-year-old man in a lab coat, worn out, and with the kindest eyes Lara remembered, came out to greet her. "Ilara, what are you doing here? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Doctor, I need your help. I need—" She broke down. The tears of anger and frustration from the past few weeks burst forth. He led her to his small office that smelled of burnt coffee and old books. "Calm down, child. Breathe. Now tell me everything." For 20 minutes, Ilara spoke. She told him about the Alcácer mansion, the pale boy, the list of 20 medications, the father's refusal, the special pillows, the white powder, and the conversation about the 200,000 euros she had just overheard. Dr. Solis listened to her in silence, his expression changing from curiosity to concern, and finally to horror. "Lara, are you absolutely sure about what you're saying, doctor? They're killing him. To accuse a colleague, especially one with Ibanez's reputation, who treats the wealthiest families in the city. I don't care about his reputation. I have proof." She took out the list of medications she had copied and the 3 packets of powder. Dr. Solis looked at the list of drugs. His eyes widened. "My God, this is insane. He's mixing beta blockers with immunosuppressants, and this is an antipsychotic. This combination could kill a healthy adult. It's a poisonous cocktail." He carefully opened one of the envelopes, smelled it. He wet the tip of his finger and tasted it. Then he spit it out. It's a bitter powder, probably pulverized orazepam, a potent sedative inhaled continuously. Of course, it would cause all the symptoms you're describing: chronic weakness, confusion, respiratory problems. Dr. Solis stood up, his kindness replaced by a cold fury. "This isn't medicine. This is an atrocious crime. What do I do, doctor? If I call the police, Julian Alcácer will never believe me. He'll think I'm after his money. Dr. Ibanez will deny everything." Dr. Solis thought for a minute. "We need irrefutable proof. We need to get that boy out of there and run a full toxicology screen on him right now. But you can't just kidnap him. You need the Father. He won't listen to me. He thinks Dr. Ibanez is a god. Then you have to make him listen. You have to find a way to convince that man to seek a second opinion by any means necessary. Look, now you have to bring that boy here. I will prepare the equipment. I will run a full battery of tests for free and off the record. Alara nodded, feeling stronger. She was no longer alone. Doctor, what if he doesn't believe me? What if he fires me? Convince him. Tonight, that boy's life depends on it. If he throws you out, call the police from outside, but it will be harder to prove. Your best bet is the Father. Alara returned to the Alcozar mansion, determined. She was no longer just a caregiver. She was Bruno's only hope. That night, she would confront Julian Alcozar. Alara returned to the Alcozar residence that night, feeling that the air was charged with electricity. She was no longer the frightened nurse who had arrived weeks ago. She was a woman on a mission, armed with the truth and the backing of an honest doctor. She waited in the main foyer, knowing that Julian Alcozar would come down to his study for his usual round of nightly calls to Asia. When he appeared at the top of the stairs, loosening his tie, she stepped forward into the light of the chandelier. Mr. Alcozar, I need to speak with you. It's urgent. Julian seemed surprised by her tone. It was firm, almost demanding. Miss Jenner, it's been a long day. Whatever you have to say can wait until tomorrow. No, sir, it can't wait, she said, advancing toward him. It's about Bruno's life and the 200,000 euros you plan to pay for fake tests in Switzerland. The color drained from Julian's face. He stopped dead in the middle of the staircase. What? What did you say? How dare you spy on me? I wasn't spying. I was listening as Dr. Ibanez gave your son a 6-month death sentence to steal your money. Julian came down the rest of the stairs, his face a mask of fury. You've gone mad. You're fired. Anko, he shouted down the hall. Anko, show Miss Jenner out. I won't leave, she yelled, her voice echoing off the marble. You can throw me out if you want. But first, you'll have to listen to me. Or would you rather keep living the lie that almost killed your son? Julian stopped. Anko, but her intensity paralyzed him. Do you believe your son is sick? Alara continued more quickly. You think he has a heart condition and an immunodeficiency, but I'm telling you that Bruno is a healthy boy, and I have proof. She took from her pocket the small cloth bag she had saved. This was sewn inside Dr. Ibanez's special pillows. Smell it. It's a sedative, powdered lorazepam. He has been drugging your son every night for 3 years. She tossed the little bag onto the mahogany table. Julian looked at it as if it were a snake. And this, she said, pulling out the list of medications. It is the cocktail of poison he gives him every day. He's giving him an immunosuppressant and an antifungal. Bruno's symptoms are not from an illness. They are the side effects of the drugs you pay that man to give him. Julian's world was reeling. He wanted to deny it, but Alara's conviction was terrifying. Sir, Alara said, her voice softening for the first time. I lost a brother, too. I know what guilt is. I know that you feel responsible for your wife's death in childbirth, and Dr. Ibanez knows it. He has been using your pain and your guilt as a weapon to isolate you, to control him, and to steal from him. You are not to blame for anything, and your son is not dying. That was the sentence that broke him. My son is not dying. He is being poisoned, she affirmed. But we can save him right now. Get him dressed. Take him to the North Public Hospital. Dr. Hector Solis is waiting for us. Have a blood test done on him. Just one. In an hour, you will know the truth. Julian looked at her, his gray eyes filled with a primal terror. The terror of her being right, and the terror of her being wrong. And so, Julian said, his voice unrecognizable, bring my coat and prepare the land cruiser. We're leaving, sir? The butler hesitated. And bring a blanket for Bruno. 15 minutes later, Julian Alcocer, the multimillionaire, was walking out the front door with his sleeping son in his arms, wrapped in a blanket, followed by the young nurse, who had just risked everything. They arrived at the North Public Hospital, a world apart from the private clinics that Julian frequented. Dr. Hector Solis was waiting for them at the emergency room door. Mr. Alcocer, said Dr. Solis, without any formalities. I'm Dr. Solis. Elara has brought me up to speed. Let's make this quick. They took Bruno to a pediatric room. They gave him an electrocardiogram. Perfect heart, murmured the technician. They gave him a chest X-ray. Lungs clear, full capacity, said Dr. Solis, looking at the negative. Finally, the blood test. They drew a small vial from Bruno, who didn't even wake up. The toxicology lab will prioritize it. We'll have the results in an hour, said Dr. Solis. That hour was the longest in Julian Alcocer's life. He sat on an orange plastic chair in his rumpled, multi-thousand-euro suit, watching his son sleep on a gurney under the fluorescent light. Elara stayed by his side in silence. Finally, Dr. Solis returned with several papers in his hand. His face was grim. Mr. Alcocer, the doctor said, your son is a perfectly healthy 4-year-old boy. Physically, he's in the 50th percentile. There's no trace of heart disease, not the slightest hint of immunodeficiency. His white blood cell count is normal. Julian closed his eyes, a tear escaping. So, he's healthy? He's healthy. Yes, said Dr. Solis, but he is also being poisoned. His toxicology panel is the worst I have ever seen in a child. He has levels of lorazepam in his blood, equivalent to those of an adult being treated for severe anxiety. And we have found traces of 3 drugs: a beta blocker, an antipsychotic, and an immunosuppressant. Sir, Miss Jenner was right if he had continued this treatment. Your son would not have died from an illness. He would have died from liver or kidney failure caused by this cocktail. Julian covered his face with his hands. It was not relief that he felt, but a rage so pure and cold that it burned him. He had been deceived. They had hurt his son. They had stolen 4 years from him. He stood up. Dr. Solis, I don't know how to thank you. Doctor, can you give me a copy of these results? Of course, and a signed statement. They returned to the mansion just before dawn. Julian was carrying Bruno in his arms. The boy, away from the poisoned pillows for the first time in days, was sleeping a deep and restful sleep. When they entered, Ansuo Barros was waiting for them in the foyer. Sir, is everything all right? Julian looked at the butler. Anso, take each and every one of the pillows from Bruno's room, the special ones from Dr. Ibanez. Take them to the incinerator in the garden and burn them. Then take all the medications from that room, every bottle, every box, and bury them. I want everything destroyed before the sun comes up. Anso was pale. Sir, Dr. Ibanez is a fraud. My son is healthy. That morning, the transformation was incredible. Bruno woke up at 7 in the morning without sedatives, without the fog of the drugs. He sat up in bed, looked around, and jumped to the floor. He ran down the hallway shouting, Aunt Alara! Aunt Alara! I'm strong! I'm hungry! Alara ran to meet him and hugged him, crying with joy. Julian watched from the doorway of his office, and for the first time in 4 years, felt the weight of his guilt disappear. At 10 in the morning, the dark sedan of Dr. Ramiro Ibanez came up the driveway. He arrived smiling with his briefcase, no doubt expecting to discuss the details of the 200,000 euro transfer. Julian met him in the foyer. Ramiro, you're right on time. Of course, Julian. Bruno's condition is critical. We can't waste any time, said the doctor, heading for the stairs. There's no need for you to go up, said Julian, his voice low and dangerous. Bruno is in his room. At that moment, Bruno came running down the hall, chasing Alara, both of them roaring with laughter. They rushed past Dr. Ibanez like a blur. The doctor froze. His face went from bewilderment to panic. Julian, what is this? That boy can't run. He'll have a crisis. Curious, isn't it? Said Julian. It turns out that without your poison pillows and your cocktail of drugs, my son is a perfectly normal child. Julian, I don't know what you're talking about. That nurse has gotten into your head about those tests from Switzerland, Ramiro, Julian shouted. I know about the extortion, and I know about the lorazepam. Dr. Ibanez tried to turn and run for the door, but Ancho Barros, who had heard everything from the hallway, had moved to block the exit. The gentleman is not going anywhere, said the butler, his face impassive. You've made a mistake, Julian, the doctor hissed. Trapped. I'm the only one who can keep him stable. The only thing that's going to be stable are your bank accounts when the police freeze them, Julian retorted, pulling out his phone. I'm calling the police, and then I'll call my lawyer. You're going to spend the rest of your life in jail. 20 minutes later, 2 police cars pulled up the driveway. Dr. Ramiro Ibanez was arrested for practicing medicine without a license, extortion, fraud, and multiple counts of child abuse. As they were taking him away, Bruno approached his father. Dad, why are they taking the doctor away? Julian knelt, placing his hands on his son's shoulders. Because he was a bad man, champ. He was making you sick on purpose so you couldn't run. Yes, but he won't do it anymore. Now you can run as much as you want. Bruno hugged his father tightly. Thank you for saving me, Dad. No, champ, Julian said, looking over his son's shoulder at Ilara. Thanks to Ilara, she saved us both. In the following months, life at the Alcocer residence was transformed. The silence was replaced by laughter, screams, and the sound of feet running down the hallways. The police investigation revealed that Dr. Ibanez was a psychopath. He had deceived 4 other wealthy families using the same method. Finding a vulnerable father, usually a widower or divorced, inventing a complex illness for a healthy child, and extorting fortunes in 19 fake treatments. He was sentenced to more than 20 years in prison. Julian Alcocer drastically reduced his hours of work to spend time with Bruno. He learned to ride a bike with him, taught him to swim in the pool, which before was just an ornament, and read him stories at night. And Ilara stayed on, no longer as a caregiver, but as an indispensable part of their lives. One afternoon, 6 months after the arrest, Julian found her in the garden, watching Bruno play soccer with friends that he had made at his new school. Ilara, Julian said, I don't know how to thank you for what you did. I did my job, Mr. Alcocer. Please, call me Julian. And you did so much more. You saved my son's life. You gave me mine back. He moved closer to her. Any other caregiver would have left or would have kept quiet. I guess I'm stubborn, she said, smiling. I've noticed, he said, smiling back at her. And I've realized something else. This house was empty. Bruno and I were empty, and then you came along. Ilara felt her heart start to race. Julian, I am falling in love with you, Ilara Guiner, he said, with a seriousness that disarmed her. I fell in love with your courage, with your kindness, and the way you fought for my son as if he were your own. Julian, I don't know what to say. You're my boss. Technically, you're unemployed, he joked. Bruno doesn't need a caregiver anymore, but he does need a mother, and I need a partner. Before Ilara could process it, Bruno ran towards them, sweaty and happy. Dad, Aunt Ilara, did you see my goal? It was incredible, champ, said Julian. Hey, Bruno, can I ask you something? Sure. What would you think if Ilara became your mom? Really? Bruno stood still, his green eyes shifting from his father to Ilara. Like getting married? Only if you want to, said Julian. Yes, Bruno shouted, jumping into Ilara's arms, almost knocking her over. Please, Aunt Ilara, say yes. I want you to be my mom. Ilara, crying and laughing, she looked at Julian over the boy's head. How can I resist this? Is that a yes? Julian asked. It's a yes. 6 months later, in a simple ceremony in the mansion's garden, Julian and Ilara got married. Bruno was the best man carrying the rings. Dr. Hector Solis was the guest of honor. 1 year later, Bruno, now a boisterous and happy 5-year-old boy, burst into his parents' room one Saturday morning. Mom, Dad, wake up. Ilara woke up laughing. Good morning, my little earthquake. Mom, is it true? Bruno asked, jumping on the bed. What is, sweetie? That I'm not going to be an only child anymore. That I'm going to have a little brother. Ilara looked at Julian over Bruno's head, and he smiled tenderly at her. Ilara was 3 months pregnant. How did you know, little detective? Julian asked. Because Dad won't stop touching your belly, Mom, and I want to teach him how to climb the tree in the garden. Julian hugged his wife and son. His family was complete. The mansion, which was once a silent tomb of sadness and guilt, was now a home full of life, laughter, and above all, love. A love that had been born from the courage of a woman who refused to accept the darkness and decided to fight for the light of a child, an innocent one.